This is our usual program night at the Society, a third Monday of every month. For those of you who haven't met me yet, I'm Bill Donuth. I'm the president of the Society. And we're glad to have you all out here tonight. We're going to let Bill do his thing first, and then we'll have a short business meeting, and then we'll have some refreshments in the back after that business meeting is over. Desserts, mostly. Okay, our program chair is our Vice President, Diane Osborne. Diane, would you introduce our speaker?
Yes, our speaker this evening, and I'm sure you're all very familiar with Bill. He's been around Logan County for 100 years, so you've probably bumped into him somewhere. Long live. And anyway, Bill is going to reminisce with us tonight about 100 years of changes in Logan County. And you may throw some other tidbits in, if that's Bill. And also, Bill is, as you know, a news talk show co-host, and did that for many years. He also owned and operated, along with his wife Jean, the Gossett cleaners and decorators, and of course that involved Mohawk carpets, as he reminded me. So that's still in the sales is still in his blood. And he spent 3 years in the Army Air Corps, and then came home. His father died at the young age of 50, so Bill got involved in business when he came back. And from that, I'll let Bill take over.
Diane, you left a few things out that my mother wrote for you.
Okay.
First and foremost, in the back, Mr. Walden, can you hear the clear in the back? Can you hear all right back there?
Good morning.
See you in the morning. So then, Billy, I will not use the...
You won't use the mic? Okay.
If anybody says that they can't hear, you pop your hand up and we'll take care of that now. Yeah. So I'm really pleased, and more honored than pleased. I'm sitting here looking and watching people come in. And I'm thinking, wow, I know that. Gee, Liz, I know that. And the first thing I know, I'm sitting in a room with people that are very, very close to me. And I appreciate their being here. You made a mistake, Diane and Bill, in asking an old man to ramble about what he remembers in Logan County. I might get carried away, and you might have to get the hook out. Some of you older people will remember what the hook is in vaudeville. So if I see the hook coming behind me, I'll know it's time to get out of here. So I call my remarks the days of yore. And that is Y-O-R-E, not Y-O-U-R. I find as I look around, I'm amazed at the number of people here, considering the fact that there's very interesting things going on in television today with our election system. And so I kind of honored that I outshone the electricians or the politicians for whatever they are. So in any event, the first thing I want to talk about is this street out here, Chicago Street. Because a block from here is where I started in business due to my, didn't intend to. Came home from Europe after the Second War was over and found a seriously ill father who was in business just at 114 South Chicago Street. And he was unable to fulfill his duties. My mother had 2 kids at home and a partner that was somewhat of a, I'll clean up my language and talk about that later. In any event, my mother had her house full and her hands full. And I just made a decision with her concurrence and my father's concurrence that I wouldn't go back to school. I left the University of Illinois campus in October of, I enlisted in October of 42, and I left there at the end of that fall semester in 1942. With the proviso that as I enlisted, I would be assigned to the, what was known as the Army Air Corps. Yeah, they took care of me and made that assignment. So 3 years of that, and I came home, and my plans were being made while I was overseas. I was planning to go back to the University of Illinois, and that didn't pan out, as it turned out. And that hasn't been the worst thing in the world for me. God's been very, very good to me, and I don't mean that in a light way at all. He's helped me make some real decisions, saved my life 2 or 3 times, and a couple of those I'll allude to if I don't forget going down the road here. So in any event, the big thing that I remember on Chicago Street was the Illinois traction system. We called it the interurban. And that was defined as a heavy-duty electrical railroad with the electric current coming in from a line overhead. And it was the transportation for Central Illinois. It went from St. Louis, Peoria, to Danville, to Decatur. And it was a really handy thing for a lot of folks. For instance, my father and mother somehow found the wherewithal to make sure my teeth were straightened. Lord knows they needed. And so to prevent my mother, after once we established with the orthodontist, I remember they're driving me down every week. I came down here Saturday morning, hopped on the interurban car and went to Springfield. Took a bus from the east side of Springfield into downtown Springfield. And when I was done, it reversed my course. So it was traction was a big thing to us at that time. It was a God saver. So it served Danville to Peoria. So actually it went to St. Louis and up through here in Central Illinois. And one of the things about the traction system, they would stop and pick up mail cans. Milk cans is what I want to say, not mail cans, for goodness sakes. But people put their milk cans out beside the tracks and stop and pick them up, or they'd exchange them. Now, these are the days before refrigeration, as we know it. I don't know what happened to those cans full of milk. A lot of them got there sour, I'm certain of that, but it had to be the case. So in any event, it became a great commuter line for Peoria, Decatur. You had to go somewhere else to get to Decatur, but you could get to Decatur on the Illinois traction. The big problem was that coming down Chicago Street, it was a real traffic problem. And I experienced that at 114 South Chicago Street, just a half a block from Kirkland's Corner. That was the corner in Chicago Street and Pulaski Street. That was quite a grocery store. Now this was either Elmer Brown's grocery store or Toll's ice cream store, and I don't know which. Billy Dolan might know that difference, but this was one or the other. And I came in to say goodbye to Mark Tull, who was running the ice cream shop, and he'd been in the First War. And I'm not going to repeat what he told me to do. I'm in Nick's company, so I'm just going to clean it up. But he just told me, you go over and get those blanky blanks. And he had no idea that my service was not even remotely connected to what he'd been through. But anyway, I always remember what Mark and Mickey said about that. This street being as narrow as it was, when that interurban came down the middle, traffic stopped from Pulaski Street, Kirkland's Corner, down to Beacon Street. There was a lot of traffic, and they just didn't go anywhere. One of the things we had on Chicago Street and Broadway, one of the 3 and 4 of the major drugstores at the time was Alvy's Corner, right down here on the corner here. And that was known, good time to say this today, that was the Republican headquarters for Logan County. That was not official. That's just the way it turned out. All the big Republicans went in there on Sunday morning for their papers, and you could hear a lot of things you didn't need to hear in there. Joe Sapp was the Logan County Republican chairman.
Yes.
Joe Sapp was a very unusual man. And it was politics in the old way. And at one point in time, I went to Joe. My son Greg was graduating from high school, and I was trying to get him a summer job at what they called then Lincoln State School in Colorado. That was the official name for it. And mind you, these two words were part of the lexicon, feeble-minded. I'll stop and pause and think about that just a minute here in 2024. Feeble-minded was a common expression. You didn't think a thing about that. So in any event, Joe came to look for me, and he got a job, Greg a job out there. And the first time there was time for him to sell tickets for a fundraiser, there appeared Joe with his hand out. Naturally, I knew what the drill was. So I bought the tickets. The next Republican, maybe 3 weeks later, he comes with another Republican ticket. I paid him. I said, Joe, how long is this going to go on? How long do I have to pay for that job? And he said, well, you know how it works, Bill. I said, I do, and I'm happy to conclude with it. So that was the way it worked. And Joe Sapp was unique. It was said that he could walk into the governor's office down there in Springfield. He was they called this Sapp County instead of Logan County. And but one thing about Joe Sapp, he was honest as this table is straight. And I never had any problem with Joe because that was the way politics works. And it was honorable the way it was run. It wasn't like what we have today. By the way, you people are all passing up a real opportunity to see something going on tonight. So I'm going to send you home early. Perpin's Corner was a unique place. Joe Perpin, and they built later on, Danny Perpin built what is known as Perpin Building right over here in the corner of Latham Park. And that is ultimately where my mother lived after my father died. She sold her house. And it was a 3-story building with no elevators. It was pretty hard for somebody in their 80s to negotiate that, but she did nonetheless. So there was a lot of commercial activity downtown. Some of the drugstores around town were Firebackers, Boss Drugs, Fowles, Alvy's. That would be, and there was a drugstore called in the middle of the block called Hunter's. That was in the middle of the west side of the courthouse square, just down what we called Kresge's Corner. Kresge being the dime store down here. And the activities in downtown were, this was before television, and the stores were all busier. We had some unusual things happen down here. Mind you now, this was the days of the early Depression that I'm kind of working with right now, and things were tight, as they say. One of the things I remember, a lot of activity downtown is what is known as the Sears Roebuck is now the office where Justice Tom Harris has his office for his law office in there, and that was Sears Roebuck building. And I remember one thing about that. The fellow came down and he somehow fashioned a tightrope from the corner of that building down to the courthouse on the Broadway side of the courthouse. And he tightrope walked down, and that was a big deal for us. Of course, I was a young kid running around and get that kid's autograph. In any event, there was a lot of activity like that. And the big thing about downtown Lincoln, Saturday night was the shopping night, not Friday night. And the farmers would come to town and would get their shopping, and they would all vie for a place to park around Kresge's Corner, which is the dime store corner over here. And so they could sit in their car and watch and see who's coming and going. They didn't care when they got their shopping done, they wanted to see what the action was. It was a fun thing to watch that. The streetcars that were up and down Chicago Street here they created, I alluded to them a few minutes ago, they created a real traffic problem, and it's almost certain that sometime during the course of the month, one or two cars are going to get squeezed and end up in some repair shop somewhere. That interurban was not going to give, he had the right of way and he was going to take it. So some of the businesses in town, Armour's Creamery, Lincoln Garment Factory right down here in the next block, Lincoln Sand and Gravel, which morphed into Lincoln Weights, and the Justice, how do you do, sir? Nice to see you, sir. 2-1. We have Justice Harris here, so I've overcome now with the law. The Lincoln Lakes was a result of Lincoln Sand and Gravel Company, was an unusual place and a wonderful place for this town. The swimming beach was formed by the mining of sand and gravel, and as a result of that, the entailments thereof were pure, real nice sand. And so Lincoln Lakes Company was formed, and a part of that was learn to swim with. And we have a lady here whose husband, beg your pardon, sorry, Abby, whose father, Herb Alexander, almost drowned your speaker during the course of Learn to Swim Week. I wanted to get what was known as the Water Safety Instructors Rating. I was already teaching out there along with many, many volunteers, and we have little folks and older people, some really older people, and you can bet that the first 2 days of learning to swim, you're going to freeze your derriere off, because it always turned cold the first week of Learn to Swim Week. In any event, I wanted to acquire this water safety instructor's badge to put on my swim trunks. Herb Alexander, the Red Cross representative, and he gave me my instructions and passed me. And in the course of that, there's a part of that where you have to swim out, and the instructor would take care of a drowning victim and grab you from the front or from the back. And there's a very definite way to get yourself out of that. And Herb was a big man. I was a little guy. And by the way, I worked for him in his grocery store. Maybe he was getting back at me. But anyway, he really put me through the ropes on that, and I really enjoyed that. Another thing that I remember about that time of my life, just during the Depression, of course, and you see freight trains. This is still today a huge freight train railroad, and these boxcars would go by, and you'd see what we call bums sitting in the open doors with their legs hanging out. Now, what kept them from being bounced out, I haven't had any idea, but that was very common to see a freight train go through anywhere. Bums sitting on the side of it with nothing, apparently nothing holding them in except their weight. So that was an interesting thing. Another building we had downtown was very interesting, and I'm sure today it's still owned by the Independent Order of Oddfellows. That's the building next to our post office. And that was where the Courier had their offices and had their printing presses in the basement. They published their paper there in that Oddfellows building. And the interesting thing about that is John and Eileen Nugent were the publishers of the Courier. Eileen picked John up somewhere in Cotswold part of England somewhere, going back and tried to Americanize him. It never worked. But John would go around the street with his top hat on, not a full top hat, it was an English hat. And one day he said, he'd come down the street and he said, "Bill, old fellow, how are you?" John couldn't have cared less how I was. I said, "I'm terrible, John," and kept on working. So, but he was an unusual individual. Eileen Nugent ran, or so she thought, a lot of the things that were going on because of her importance of the Lincoln Courier. The interesting thing that happened in that building, we had a fellow named Logan Hill, who was an attorney. And Logan was well-to-do, and did strange things. One time he disappeared and we went to Central America somewhere. And how in the world he did that, I have no idea, nobody ever knew. But he sent a boa constrictor, how in the world that was ever done, I don't know, to John Nugent. And John Nugent didn't know what to do with this live boa constrictor now, ladies and gentlemen. He put in his front window of the courier office, and of course everybody had to go see it. And I know how long that thing lasted. Couldn't have lasted very long. What the heck was it going to eat? But anyway, Logan Hill sent that big fat snake, and there it appeared in the office of the Lincoln Courier, and everybody, of course, had to go see it. One of the things that I liked to do as a kid was get on a bike and ride around, and I was lucky to have a bike. I don't know how my father did some of those things. My father was born dirt poor. And at some point in time in his life, he made a determination that wasn't going to define him. And as a result of that, his own efforts, he became a very successful man. And so much so that when Dad died at the early age of 50, Jack Devaney, a friend of his, was in Seattle, Washington at the time. Jack Devaney got on a plane and flew to Lincoln for my father's funeral. The next day he got on the plane and went back. That spoke volumes of this kid. That spoke volumes. So I'm a very lucky man. God gave me a set of parents who had good sense and who made sure that they were going to try to pound that good sense into my head. And I found out the hard way several times, maybe many times. One of the things of the business we had downtown was a Coca-Cola bottling plant, and that was a big thing. And Howard Vaughn and his son Jimmy ran that, and they had a concession stand at what was known as Chautauqua.